This is one of them.
O su fare 4 passi per 7 chiesette. Ma quanti anni che era? Venia su, cotoni, su per 7 chiesette, torni e c'è l'età, si usa anche qua. Piove. Fare che panorama, l'ospedale do cago partorio, e era a camera mortuoria, guarda, tutto sarà adesso.
Guarda, tutto sarà adesso.
Che ha messo passando 20 fiorte, se mi e Tony se mettiamo qua a farci a foto.
Stiamo facendo il video tutto in italiano adesso? Yeah. Ok.
Previously on Ugly Paul's Garage, we talked about exhaust. We put the headers and engine mounts on our Coyote, and we got a new aftermarket exhaust system for our Mustang. On today's episode, we installed the clutch and the transmission. Let's go! Alright, so let's start out with the pilot bearing. The truck this engine was in was an automatic, so it doesn't have one. So we're gonna put some assembly lube into the, I guess the hole for it. And we're going to carefully insert the bearing, making sure that it's nice and straight. And using a socket of approximately the same size, we're gonna take a hammer and use it to tap the bearing in. And you don't wanna use the hammer directly on the bearing. You don't wanna dent or ding it up. You wanna use a socket to distribute the force of the hammer. Just go slow and take your time.
Do you just... Huh? Do you have to get it flush or do you have to totally bottom it out? Oh, it's bottom out. She's in.
So I must have misplaced the block plate, the plate that goes between the engine and the transmission, because I couldn't find it at the time, so I had to order another one off of Amazon, surprisingly. And of course, later on, we did end up finding the stock block plate that came with the truck, but it was for an automatic, so I don't think it would have worked anyway, so either way, I would have had to buy it. I also ended up having to get a new flywheel. If you remember back to episode 2, I talked a bit about the peculiarities of these flywheels and the reasons why I decided to go this way. And so, without thinking too much about it, I bought a flywheel off a 2017 Mustang GT without considering the question of whether I want to use a clutch meant for the MT82 or one meant for the TR3650. And that turned out to matter because the alignment dowels and the bolt holes on the flywheel are different between the Coyote flywheels and the 4.6 liter flywheels. So the pressure plate isn't going to be interchangeable, and if you get a friction disc for a Coyote motor, that's also going to be different because the MT82 has a 23 spline input shaft and the TR3650 has a 10 spline input shaft. And here's the kicker: if you want to reuse your old flywheel from a 4.6 liter, if you have one, you can't, because it only has 6 bolts, but the Coyote motor needs an 8-bolt flywheel. So rather than using a Coyote flywheel and playing mix and match with the clutch and pressure plate, I decided to just get a new flywheel from either a Mustang Cobra or a Terminator Cobra. Any flywheel for the 4-valve version of the 4.6 liter should work. And here you can see Ugly Paul putting the flywheel on. It's worth noting that it can only go on one way, so the holes aren't equally spaced. And if it's not in the right orientation, you won't be able to get all the bolts in. So spin it around a few times, have a look at it, and make sure everything lines up.
Oh, there it is.
There you go. And we didn't show it on camera, but it's also a very good idea to clean the flywheel before you install it. A lot of times they'll have an oil coating on them to prevent rust, and that'll prevent your clutch from grabbing, so you want to make sure that the surface is nice and clean. So give it a good wipe down with some brake cleaner or some grease remover.
As long as there's 2 bolts there, I think should be okay. And that one's going in. And that one seems to go in.
Once you got the flywheel seated nice and flush, you can start running the bolts in. and again, just till they're finger tight. And once you got them in finger tight, we can start torquing them to spec. And there is a proper order to these, so I'll throw it up on screen. Feel free to pause the video if you need to. Better than anything out today.
Pardon me?
Better than anything out today.
Oh man, I hate the music out today.
I know.
Oh my god.
Pronta per tutta la notte il giorno sempre l'inferno in giro po', miglior cucagna per un barbiere, vita sui nobili non si do. Rotori e fatti, non siete forti. 5, 6, 7, 8. Dico di tuo. Che mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, donne e ragazzi, le vecchie fanciulle, quella parrucco, questa lavanda, quella sanguigno, e tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, tutti mi vogliono.
And speaking of torquing down bolts, we decided this would be a good opportunity to torque the bolt on the harmonic balancer while we're at it, while we got the flywheel stopped from turning. Because if you'll remember, we didn't torque it when we put it on, so we're going to do it now. And this is kind of weird because you have to tighten it and loosen it and tighten it again. Well, you'll see what I mean. I didn't really capture it on camera very well, but the gist of it is to tighten it to 103 foot-pounds, then back it off 360 degrees, and then tighten it back up to 74 foot-pounds, and then an additional 90 degrees. Why you have to do that, I don't know, but that's what Ford specifies, so that's what we're going to do. Anyway, back to the transmission. We're giving it a good wipe down with brake cleaner to get any coating or oils off it, because if you don't, they can cause the clutch to slip, and you don't want that. So make sure it's clean before you put the clutch on. And now we put in the friction disc using the alignment tool that came with our clutch kit. And then lining up the holes on the pressure plate with the dowels on the flywheel, we put the pressure plate on and we run a few bolts in to secure it. And we're turning the bolts 1 to 2 turns at a time in a star pattern until the clutch is nice and secured on the flywheel. And then we gave each bolt an additional 180 degrees, again in a star pattern. And now we torque the clutch to spec. Stage 1 is 46 foot-pounds, and we're just going in a star pattern again. Then take it all back apart again because you f***ed up and you forgot to clean the face of the pressure plate.
I noticed that. Okay, so this all has to come off. However that comes off. Yeah, there's a clip here. There's a clip there, this comes off and then that goes in. That's how that works.
And now with the clutch installed, we can finally turn our attention to the transmission. And our clutch kit came with a new slave cylinder, so we're going to take out this crusty old stock slave cylinder and we're going to replace it with the new one. But before we do, we're going to draw a few diagrams and take a few measurements just so we have something to compare against. So we're measuring the distance from the old throwout bearing to the face of the bell housing.
4.675. 4.675, that's the original. So, I assume the original worked. The only thing we don't know is how deep the clutch is, right? This is going to bolt right to the engine block.
Yeah.
Then you got your flywheel.
Yep.
Then you got your disc.
Right.
And then you got your clutch, right? And the clutch is going to push this in. Wow.
I swear to God, that never happens.
I guess there was oil in there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to roll this over for a minute. Try and get the oil out of here. Since now we know there's oil in there. Okay, try and push that in gently. That's it.
That's got to be it, right?
I don't know. No, that's probably more. Okay, stop.
I think most of it's on the wall.
Yeah. That's one clip. Wow. Bugger. That's going to need a new roll ring. There she goes. There. There she goes. I got her. So yeah, look at it's got this thing here too, and they don't use that backspacer here, whereas yours has that backspacer. Now if we put the backspacer on, see they put it on like that, so we can try it on like that.
Don't bolt it in. We can just measure it.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
And with the new slave cylinder in there, we can take the same measurement again and see how they compare with each other.
4.550. 200 thou. Oh, now the bolts don't reach. They just barely reach. I'm gonna have to get longer bolts. Yeah, it's less. Now we got like 4.350. 4.350. Can you see that?
Oh, which side of the square did we use?
Yeah, that's the problem. So this square is probably 2 inches right on, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's 2 inches right on. So we need to take 2 inches off that.
So I guess I should explain why we're taking these measurements. We want to know where the throw bearing is going to be relative to the fingers on the pressure plate when the transmission is bolted up to the engine, because we want to know how far it's going to push the clutch fingers in when the clutch is disengaged, because if it's not pushing them far enough, the clutch isn't going to fully disengage and it's going to slip. But we don't want to push them in so far that the tips of the fingers are going to mash into the friction disc. The problem is that you can't take that measurement while the transmission's bolted up, because it's going to be inside the bell housing. You can't access it. So we have to take a bunch of smaller measurements and calculate it instead. So using a straight edge, we can measure from the face of the bell housing to the face of the throwout bearing and get that distance. And we can measure from the back of the engine block to the face of the clutch, or rather the face of the clutch fingers, and get that distance. And then we can just subtract, and we know that what the distance is going to be when the two are bolted together.
The tension on those springs, like you're pushing those fingers in and it relieves the tension on the clutch. And then when you let go, those fingers snap back, they push that back in, right? And they put the tension back on the clutch. They grab that clutch. So anytime you're pushing those fingers in, you're actually separating the flywheel and the clutch. That's what's happening.
Okay.
Okay?
So Ugly Paul's using a paint pen on the throwout bearing here and pressing it against the clutch, and hopefully it'll leave a little bit behind and you can see where the
So that's where you
where the
measure.
throat bearing makes contact with the fingers, and then you know where to
This.
measure to.
And like that. So we need from this finger to here. So what we're going to do is get this measurement minus this one, and that'll be the distance from that finger to here. This is the dimension we need.
So here we're measuring from the face of the pressure plate to the point on the fingers where the throat bearing makes contact.
That is 2.4, let's call it 2.475 minus 2 because of the thickness of the ruler. So this dimension is 0.475.
Now we measure from the face of the pressure plate to the engine block. And when we subtract the previous measurement from this one, we get the distance
is
from the engine block to the fingers.
5.275 minus 2. So 3.275. So that is 3.275. Right. So 3.275 minus 0.475. 0.08. 2.8 inches. If that's 2.625 and that's 2.8, that is going to give us 0.275 stroke.
Compression?
Pardon me?
Of compression
Yeah.
on the cylinder?
Yeah, that's all the movement you're going to get. It's like just a little over a quarter inch. I think you need more.
That's the original.
That's the original one. But yours sticks out more. Like it's closer, right?
Yeah.
So if we use the shim, then you have, let's go without shim, you're going to be 2.8 minus 2.350, 0.54, 0.45. With shim, it's 2.8 minus, sorry, I did the wrong one. This is without shim, 2.5, 5 from 7 is it's quarter inch. With the shim, it's 2.350, 0.574.4. So that's the amount of push you have right now. That's the travel you're going to have. Quarter inch or 450 thou.
If you didn't understand most of that, don't feel too bad. Neither did we. Spoiler alert, we ended up coming back and revisiting this later. And I don't think you need to be bang on precise with your measurements. I think there is a little bit of wiggle room, a bit of room for error. But on the other hand, it's worth taking your time and getting this right the first time, so you don't have to take the transmission out of the car and do it again.
You don't need much travel, because as soon as you just have to push it enough to make a little bit of a gap. As soon as there's a gap, then the friction disc just kind of spins along with whatever, right?
Anyway, let's bolt this transmission up. Hopefully that made some sense. We didn't have a transmission jack, so we just put it on this little shop stool here, which is nice because we could wheel it around and made it easy to get it into place. And when you're bolting it up, remember you got to get the input shaft of the transmission to thread properly into the pilot bearing, which is kind of a pain, but it's far easier doing it with the engine out like this than when it's in the car.
Pronta per tutta la notte il giorno sempre mi intorno.
Let's go a little further, like that.
Quella ricorso poi del mestiere alla bandiera poi cavaliere
And that is it for the transmission. Now we're putting the starter motor on. And in retrospect, probably best to do this before you put the headers on because the bolts are in a really awkward position. It's just a real pain to get your hands in there. And while I didn't get it on video, make sure to torque the starter motor bolts to 18 foot-pounds. But wait, there's more. We still got some work to do on the inside of the car. Our new manual transmission is going to need a clutch pedal. And luckily for us, we got the pedal assembly with the transmission. So we're just going to clean this thing up and get it ready to go in the car.
There we go.
There, it's out.
Yeah, it just pulls out like that. Hold on to that. This, I think, that clip is supposed to hold this in. This is like a, I'm not going to say shark bite, but there we go. This is just a push-in seal. Probably has an O-ring on it. There we go. Yep, it's got an O-ring seal. There's your groove for that spring clip there. So we have to get this unit all together. Really, we could put this in and then that just plugs in, put the clip in and you're done. So it's basically just like that. Oops. And then this comes out. This is your clutch switch. This is your brake switch.
Why is there two?
Two what?
Switches.
Oh, for the brake?
Yeah.
Well, one is probably to activate the...
One's for the brake lights. What's the other one?
One's for the brake lights and the other one's for your shifting, I think. There we go. One. There. And that's that. And we can unhook the one in your car and just hook these in.
These pedals were pretty rusty. I think they were just sitting on a garage floor for a long time when we got them. So we're just going to throw a coat of paint on them just to make them look a little nicer. We're not going to take apart the assembly and paint everything individually. We're just phoning it in here. Meanwhile, under the hood, there's a little hole in the firewall here where the clutch master is supposed to stick through. But on automatic cars, it looks like they just put a piece of like insulating tape over it. So we're just gonna cut out the shape of the hole, and now we have a place for our clutch master to stick through. And this is the part that sucks. So under the dash is a pretty awkward place to get to, so we ended up taking the whole driver's seat out just to get in there easier. I couldn't get a camera up into there while he was working, so I don't have footage of what Ugly Paul's actually doing, but he's working on disconnecting the stock pedal assembly from the automatic. And what it involves is disconnecting all the electrical connectors, disconnecting the hydraulics for the brake cylinder, and taking out the mounting bolts that fix it to the firewall.
You want me to put the camera in here and I can show you? Yes. Okay. This has got to go up through there. The plug for the clutch. I don't see it yet. Want to take a picture of it?
Just video.
Okay. So right here, there's some kind of plug right there, and I think that might need an extension to get to this guy here, which is your clutch pedal. On your brake pedal, yeah, this goes over top of the safety pin for your brake pedal. It's a safety on top of a safety. Let me see, those bolts are tight. 1 and 2 top, And those 1, 2, 3, and back there 4. Yeah, those are all tight. This is a solenoid for your brake pedal, and it's plugged in. And this is your other solenoid for your brake pedal, also plugged in. One is for your brake light, and the other one is to be able to shift. And here's your solenoid for your clutch pedal. And it looks like we need a plug for that, or an adapter that goes possibly from there to there. Okay, we are done here.
Our new manual transmission's also going to need a shifter. So next on the agenda is to get the automatic shifter out, and we gotta pretty much tear apart the console to do it. But it's not too bad. For the most part, it's just held together with plastic clips, although there are a couple bolts in the storage compartment.
Holy shit, that bee is alive. There's a live bee in here.
And possibly bees.
Look at that.
Hope you're not allergic.
It was alive. Oh man, how do you get it past that thing? There we go. Now we'll have to take this apart and leave it apart until you get the transmission in, right? Yeah. Because you gotta bolt something in from the transmission. I didn't know that came off.
And once you get the console off, that'll expose the 4 bolts for the shifter. Take those out and you can just pull it out. And that'll do it. We're not going to put the new shifter in because it's already attached to the transmission, so it'll be going in when the engine goes in. But that's going to wrap it up for today. This video is already too long. I was hoping to cover a few more things, but that's it for the transmission anyway. So we'll call this one an episode, and I'll catch you on the next one. On the next episode of Garage di Bruto Paolo, we're going to have a general talk about wiring before we actually start doing it, because this is where things get complicated. But that's it for this one. Thanks as always for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you like the video. Or don't. Niente da fare.
Figaro bravo, vittimate fortunate, fortunate non mancherà. Fortunate, fortuna non mancherà. E solo facciate l'istero si fa, solo facciate l'istero si vede, lo si vede, lo si fa.
I can't understand a word that guy's saying.
Really?